to Los Angeles, Mr. Fink.
Excuse me?
Howdy, neighbor.
Are you a writer, Mr. Fink?
Actually, I'm writing for the pictures now.
Oh, it's an exciting time then.
Is that him? Is that Barton Fink?
Say whatever the hell you want. The writer is king here at Capitol Pictures. We're only interested in one thing. Can you tell a story, Bond? Can you make us laugh? Can you make us cry? Can you make us want to break out, enjoy a song? Is that more than one thing? Okay.
Devil on the canvas, 12 apples.
Hello and welcome to
diving right in.
Hello and welcome to the I'm Thinking of Watching Things podcast, episode 8 or maybe 9 if you count the Sofia Coppola pod as 2 separate episodes.
Shit, that's a lot.
Yeah.
We're in it. Can't back out now.
Well, Brooke's thinking about it.
Brooke would like to announce that after last week,
actually, this is when I'm leaving.
Yeah, it's fine. We deserve it.
Oh, but you're leaving right when it's getting good, Brooke, because this whole month, we have some fun programming coming at you. It's Noirvember. And so we're going to be watching noir films all month, programmed by different members of the pod. So it's really exciting. This week, I was designated by myself as being the decider of the classic noir, and we're having Arjun pair a neo-noir to go with it, and we're gonna discuss both films. As you can tell from the title, we're going to be discussing In a Lonely Place and Barton Fink, the Nicolas Ray and Coen Brothers film about screenwriters who may or may not be problematic, a little testy. Yeah, let's just jump right into it. Guys, have you seen In a Lonely Place before? I don't know. Should we discuss them together just as one jumbled mess, or should we start with the classic?
I think we should start with what our favorite Coen brothers.
Oh, wow.
Right, Brooke. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Should Brooke be moderating this discussion?
Please, I don't like being the moderator. Take it from me.
No.
What do we do now? Do we start over? This is I'm Thinking of Watching Things podcast.
They need to see we're human. We're not perfect.
That's right.
Okay, so we're actually going to start with the question. What's your favorite Coen Brothers movie? Brooke, why don't you hit us first?
Ooh, okay. So I had to Google what the Coen Brothers movies were, which I feel like is pretty indicative of just my general role on this podcast in the film world. Honestly, I've only seen Fargo once, but I have half of my family is from Minnesota. So I like it maybe only for the accents. So that's my pick.
Nice. Alicia, what do you got?
Okay, well, out of the ones that I've seen, it's hard. I would go with either Fargo, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, or Raising Arizona. I feel like Raising Arizona I love, but I'm throwing it in there because I just want to voice my love for it, even though it might not be technically my favorite. I'll go with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because I mean, like, the soundtrack alone, come on.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy that was the number one soundtrack in the entire world. Like 2000 and whatever 3 was such a bizarre place. I can't even imagine. I think the Inside Llewyn Davis soundtrack is better, and nobody listened to that.
I listened the hell out of that.
Of course.
I own that soundtrack. I'm not afraid to admit it. But yeah, my favorite is Burn After Reading, though. I love that movie almost more than anything in the world, and I don't think the Coen Brothers have any bad movies, except for I don't love Intolerable Cruelty. That might be the only one that doesn't do it for me, but Burn After Reading is one of my 5 favorite movies ever, and a surprise comfort watch for me. There are 5 times during that movie where I will just laugh so hard despite having already seen it 10 times. So I'm Arjun. Burn After Reading.
Man, I need to rewatch Burn After Reading. There's so many Coen Brothers that I need to rewatch, because I watched Burn After Reading and I was like, yeah, it's fine, not for me. But as we were saying before the podcast began, I feel like that's every Coen Brothers movies. I watch it and I'm like, yeah, it's okay, whatever, it's fine. And then the next time I watch it, I love it. So
I'll lend you my DVD if you want. Just let me know.
Oh, okay, bet. I'd love that. So my favorite Coen Brothers movie, um, it's tough. It's tough. I want to say Blood Simple just to be like, ooh, where's he coming from? But I have to go Inside Llewyn Davis. I think that film is a masterpiece of just like melancholy and artistic struggle, and it's beautiful and sad and just so like visually distinct in my mind. I can think of so many different shots, and its color palette is great to me. It was like, it's been also like a strange comfort watch because it's such a sad movie, but it's like it's almost like a warm bowl of soup to me that like consoles me, even though it's really depressing to see. But yeah, Inside Llewyn Davis. So that was our favorite Coen Brothers movies. Let's hop back 50 years and start with In a Lonely Place, directed by Nicolas Ray, starring Humphrey Bogart. And what's her, oh God, I forget her name.
Gloria Graham.
Gloria Graham. Nicolas Ray's wife. I have some fun facts for you about how this was kind of autobiographical of a film for poor Gloria Graham. But before we get into that, guys, what did you think of In a Lonely Place? Have you seen it before? Is this your first time? What did you think of it? Like it, dislike it? What's up?
I know time flies, but it's been a little more than 50 years since this movie came out.
I guess jumping back 50 years from Barton Fink.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, very fair. Yeah.
Didn't say those words though.
Oh.
Well, my main takeaway, and I said this before we started rolling, Humphrey Bogart, handsome man. I don't know, probably not a hot take, but looking pretty good.
Agreed.
Alicia? All right. I'll moderate this discussion.
Guys, something's
begging to be
wrong tonight. Yeah,
No,
okay.
We can't be like record on Mondays for me, just generally, because I am brain dead by the time we get to recording time. So
we'll cut all this out. It's fine.
Try to stick with Sunday.
Alicia, what did you think specifically? Because you I saw that you had a 3-star letterboxed review from whatever ago. So did you rewatch it, and did you have any changing opinions?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I had watched it for the first time a couple years ago, I think. And mostly actually because I wanted to I thought Gloria Graham was like a really interesting figure, and I wanted to see her in something other than Oklahoma. And she's great, but yeah, I think I liked it more this time around. I'm not like crazy about it, but I did like it. I would say, yeah, maybe a 4-star if I had to star. Yeah.
Okay. Brooke, did you have similar thoughts? Did it not land for you? They call it one of the most suspenseful pictures ever made. Did you get that vibe? The people that I watched it with did not get that vibe. I was like on the edge of my seat, and they were like, "Why are you about to fall over?"
No, my butt was firmly in place at all times. No slippage there. Honestly, I don't know. Noirvember is gonna be fun for me because I don't know how much I love classic noir movies. I don't know. It just nothing. Having seen a lot of them for class, I've probably seen maybe 10 noir films in total. Nothing jumped out at me really. I don't know. It just wasn't super different and spicy. But like Alicia said, I did enjoy it. So having this been my first watch through, I guess I'm at a solid 3-star place as well.
So that's interesting that you say there's nothing spicy about it or different, because I almost had the opposite reaction where I was questioning its noirness at first, which is genre doesn't matter and it's a made up thing that we like to put in boxes and categorize things. But I thought it was such an interesting premise, which was to not be about the murdered or the murderer or the investigators of the murderer, but rather a guy who's kind of tangentially on the edge of the case and involved enough to become a main suspect, and to see how that unravels his life. And I don't think that's where the plot ends, because he does a lot to unravel himself, and it's not just this investigation that's putting a lot of pressure on him. But I thought that was just like a real interesting setup to it, and it compounded even more with the fact that it's one of those Hollywood stories about Hollywood, about a screenwriter and art and artistry. And I thought it was a pretty rich text to watch. I really loved the ending. Got some Uncut Gems vibes going for me. I felt very tense. Didn't know. The poster has that, like, it's the suspense picture with the surprise ending or whatever. I didn't think it was a surprise ending in a way. I don't know if we're gonna jump into spoilers yet, but I thought it would have.
I think you could spoil movies that
Can
are
I
this old.
spoil?
I think the statute of limitations is far past on 1950s.
Good point. So I don't mean to like take our discussion immediately to the ending before we get Arjun's like initial thoughts. But the ending was, I assumed that it was going to be a lot darker than it was. And it ended up being a lot sadder than I thought it was going to be, or maybe even what it built itself up to be. But Arjun, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I had seen this film, I think, twice before watching it yesterday. I was first introduced to Nicolas Ray, actually, during one of my early film classes when I saw Johnny Guitar. And I kind of see this in a similar light, where he's such a deconstructionist of genre. I think, like you're saying, he's working within the vague parameters of what people thought these genres to be. And we're sort of a little bit into noir starting in the early 40s, and this movie coming out in 1950, I believe. And I think he's like working with the beginnings of this genre and kind of deconstructing it in a way that probably some of the neo-noirs that we're going to be talking about really excelled in doing later in the 20th century. And I really love it for that. And like you're saying, it's not a traditional mystery story at all. Basically the answer from the very beginning. Like he sends her on her way. Like, he didn't kill her. We know that. But still, we're able to like still have that sort of suspense. It's not like a shocking finish, I agree with you, but it's sort of like an onion, and like different layers of his personality and different storylines are still getting peeled back, and you're still learning so much more that I thought was really surprising to me, even having forgot some of the plot points from the last time I saw it. Like that scene, I think, where the first time you find out about his history of violence, where he's listing off all of the old cases against him. I think it's just like kind of like a little bit of something dropping down on you. And I think it's just a really well-written screenplay with just killer performances that really send it home for me. And I don't know, one of my favorite noirs, I think. I've always really, really loved this film.
Yeah, I think it's hopping up into one of my favorites for noir as well. So, Brooke, sorry, but we're gonna praise this film, and you got to take it down.
Oh, that's okay.
I think there are things to take down in the film, though. Like, obviously we have to cancel Humphrey Bogart, or at least his character, because what a toxic relationship at the core of this film. Did you guys feel the love there? Did you feel the romance? Did it feel tragic to you what happened in the end, or was it more of, I don't know exactly, or was it something that you didn't buy into at the while it was going on, so when it falls apart, it doesn't hit?
Well, I think it's interesting because we get a pretty significant time jump toward the beginning of the film, which would usually be like them falling in love, right? Like from the time that we see them meet, in between them being in love, there's like sort of a little bit left where we have to fill that in our minds. And I think that works really well for me because it is like a little bit uncomfortable. You don't totally buy into it, but I think that's sort of the point. I don't think this is supposed to be a relationship that you're supposed to admire in any sort of way. Like, it's flawed from the very beginning, and you get to see how it becomes even more and more so as more is revealed about these characters and what kind of shit show that they're both getting themselves into, despite I think both of them knowing from the very beginning that it's a little bit doomed.
The time jump thing is a good thing to bring up because, like, yeah, it's kind of jarring. Like, one moment they're like eye fucking each other, and then the next moment she's like making him sandwiches, and like in that moment, I think this happened the first time I watched it and this time. I was like, for a second, I was like, oh, is this the next day? And then you realize, like, no. And in terms of the ending, like, so Ed Gonzalez, the guy who co-founded Slate, compared the movie to The Stranger by Camus in like its pure existentialism, and said, Laurel and Dixon may love each other, but it's evident that they're both entirely too victimized by their own selves to sustain this kind of happiness. In the end, their love resembles a rehearsal for the next and hopefully less complicated romance. This is the existential endgame of one of Ray's smartest and most devastating masterpieces. And I was thinking, like, in the end, I can't tell if the film is positing that, like, if the idea that Dixon had murdered that girl weren't planted in Laurel's head, and if her suspicion hadn't grown, like, as a result of that, if then, like, this whole thing wouldn't have spiraled out of control and they might have been okay. And, like, I think and hope that while Laurel basically says that, and she's like, oh, you know, this would have made all the difference in the world. What?
Yeah. It's just that's a good point. Yeah, she has that
like
line.
she seems to say, like, this would have made a difference yesterday, but today it doesn't matter. And so I was like, does the movie think this too? But, like, it seems to me like it's smarter than that and knows that these events didn't cause the problems in their relationship, but, like, accelerated them. And he was going to be a paranoid, violent, abusive person no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, we're introduced to him, like, threatening to beat the shit out of some random guy in a car next to him. There feels, at least to me, like an inevitability to his hard drinking, violent character.
Yes. I think the only thing that would have been different had there not been a murder is that, like, she would have been more easily able to stay within that relationship like his agent guy did. I feel like he's a good example of, like, what their relationship might have looked like had there not been the murder, like, had they met before it or whatever, where very willing to overlook all of his many, like, abusive traits and flaws for, like, the comfort of, like, stability and stuff, which is very sad.
And that's a good point to bring up with the comparisons of the agent and of Laurel, because the agent gets out of his, you know, abusive relationship. I mean, it is abusive. He gets smacked. He is also abused, but he gets out, like, I guess, success and artistry, and that's something he's willing to put up with. And it seems as though he knows that he's made a quote unquote deal with the devil, but it takes Laurel a long time to sort of see what's right in front of her and to have people point everything out to her. And I think that this film says a lot of interesting things about, like, how to weigh the value of artistry versus how to weigh the value of love, and what abuses can the both of those take.
See, I think I view it a little bit more cynically. I mean, we have that one conversation between his agent and Laurel where he says to her, you've got to take the good with the bad. But about 20 minutes later, after he gets slapped, we see that conversation in the bathroom where the agent's basically saying, you know, times are tough, so I can't fire you right now. Like, you're my career. And I think it's almost showing how, and obviously this is something that has come to be even more evident and clear in the 70 years in Hollywood since this movie's come out, how these big, prolific, sort of larger than life Hollywood superstars, whether it be actors or behind the screens people, kind of wield this power, maybe even without realizing it, over the people in their lives. And I think, like, that sort of relationship and how it devolves between Dix and his agent, I think is emblematic of what necessarily would have happened between him and Laurel had they stayed together, had she found out earlier. Like, it's destined to come to an end, because at the end of the day, you know, Dix is wielding a sort of power over these people that kind of forces them to deal with and not really fight back against his horrible, violent personality.
Side note, Dick's Steel.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Almost as perfect as Mike Hammer in Kiss Me Deadly. But you know what's funny is like I had forgotten that his job in this film was a screenwriter. I had forgotten about like the whole Hollywood aspect of it, which is interesting. Like I think it could like I mean maybe it would be less interesting, but like it could stand alone without that. Like it didn't feel like intrinsically kind of like part of the themes in the story. But then when you do add that in the mix, obviously it like introduces
Right.
a whole new host of ideas that are really interesting.
Well, I think there's one other part that sticks out in my mind, especially in such like a short 90-minute movie too. I mean, right at the beginning of their relationship when, you know, he says, go look at her name and her face in that pile. And basically like he's using his status as a writer to sort of like leverage her, this woman that he's interested in, and gain her attention using the kind of status that he has. And that like really stuck out to me in my mind this second go around. And I think like, in a way, I think it is necessary that this be a Hollywood story, like not to push back on you too much, because I think like the underbelly dark part of the city of Los Angeles is kind of what the setting and like how dark it is portrayed, I think is really what stands out in this movie. And I don't think it's necessarily just a story about post-war, you know, America, like a lot of noirs were. I think it is a very Hollywood specific story that I think just feels so relevant and icky all of these years later.
It does feel icky, like the best noirs do. I'm not speaking well tonight. It does feel icky, but I also couldn't I couldn't help but notice how Ray refused to completely condemn Dick Steele as like just like a monster, which I think the argument can be made that he is just a violent monster, but he also is like, no, he's a genius. Like, look at how he basically solves the case for these detectives. We get that conversation between detective, what's his name, character name, and
Rub?
the wife. Rub?
It's Brub, right?
Rub?
Yeah, I think you're right, Brooke.
We get that conversation with him where the wife is like, why do you put up with them? And he's like, he's a genius. And she's like, there's that great line where he's like, don't get your college talk at me. Like, I was in the war with him. And there's like an acceptance of the toxicity, especially the male toxicity, in that he's also a genius. Like we will allow him to be this terrible person because he can write super well. But at the same time, he doesn't really write for most of it until he's actually in love. So it's like he's this hard drinking, like kind of hack screenwriter, then falls in love, and all of a sudden he can write this like great script that, you know, doesn't actually pertain to his book, that the source material, but that's good because he's getting his story out. And it's like, I don't know, it's this weird like
he needs a muse to abuse.
Yeah.
Ooh. And it's also like flipped from, I feel like a lot of the time when you have that archetype, it's like they have to somehow suffer to create amazing work. But I guess here it's when he's happy that, I mean, not everyone is happy, but
yeah, I guess most noirs are infamous for having like the rugged individualism, right, of the man, or like the central male detective, and he has like rugged dependency upon this woman. But yeah, and it's such like that, I think that part in particular is what just like so ties into Barton Fink too, and like we can get into that.
Yeah, that's so true. I was about to say that because I think he's kind of skewering the idea, especially with the alcoholic screenwriter / master novelist, you know, who has this sort of quote unquote muse. And then it turns out at the end of I don't want to spoil ahead, but she's actually sort of the brains behind it. And, you know, you almost like expect something like that to happen in a Lonely Place. And maybe if it was a movie like that came out 30 years later, it would have. But that's a very good point. Like, it seems like something is missing there because I don't know, but at the same time, we still get that same kind of like, I'm thinking of like what's that Darren Aronofsky movie with Jennifer Lawrence where
I
she's
was
in her
thinking the
house?
exact same thing, Mother.
Oh, yes.
Wait, how are you relating that back to Mother?
You know, just with the Jesus-like beautiful prophet slash poet who has to, you know, abuse this poor
Another
woman
good
who
chin.
is a
Javier
great
Bardem.
chin. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it definitely sticks out in a lot of ways as a movie of its time, while still being, I think, ahead of its time and deconstructing a lot of the broad problems with noir, which is something I think that can be said of Johnny Guitar as well. Like, it can be read as a feminist work in a lot of ways, but it's still so grounded in the flaws in general of the studio system in the 50s that it ends up just falling back on these, you know, terrible tropes and terribly written characters, to be frank.
Well, let's hop into Barton Fink, and then we'll discuss both of them at the same time. Barton Fink, Coen Brothers. We already discussed our favorite Coen Brothers film. Surface level, initial thoughts. Barton Fink, have you seen it before, Brooke? And what were your initial thoughts after having seen it?
No, I had not seen it before. Initial thoughts. Ooh, I like this. Yeah, I don't know. I like really, really liked it. I'm fresh off of watching it. I just watched it after work, like an hour ago. So I don't know that I've had time to like process all of what I'm sure are like its deep inner meanings and stuff, but love the plethora of accents that we have in there. Love the weird shining hotel, like everything, the wallpaper that like might also orgasm at one point. Yeah, I don't know. It was just, I really liked it. I think it's a movie that like I will think about. Like, do you know what I mean when I say that? I like it, like scenes will pop into my head from that movie. I am positive for like my foreseeable future. But I liked it.
Alicia.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the way that I feel with a lot of Coen Brothers movies that aren't like the Hail Caesars and the like the Oh Brother Where Art Thou's, and the ones that are kind of more, I don't know if I should say accessible or just fun. Where I, you know, for a lot of while I'm watching it, I kind of don't want to be there, but at the same time, I really appreciate it and think that there's a lot to dig into. But I love John Goodman in it so much. He's just like, I mean, like pure charisma, right? Everyone's great. I like John Turturro is like unrecognizable in that like Eraserhead get up. But yeah.
Arjun, before we get to yours, I'm watching Bly Manor right now, and every time you're in silhouette and you see like a light come on your glasses, you look like the ghost that haunts Danny, and it's freaking me out.
Spoiler alert.
You see the ghost that haunts Danny within the first 3 minutes of the first
Yeah, I'm glad you
episode.
said that because I was actually about to reveal never mind.
Well, my TV allotment for the year is all sunk in on the Queen's Gambit, so I won't be pushing on anything else. Yeah, I love Barton Fink. I don't know if I loved it as much the first time I watched it a couple years ago. Just like I was binging the Coen Brothers movie at some point, just being like, all right, I gotta knock the big ones out of the way, and probably got lost in the shuffle of the ones that are a little bit more like audacious. But I was cracking up this time. Like, I know it's not like a traditionally fun movie, but I think it is just so hilarious and dark. And I don't know. I think smarter people than I have made the comparisons, but feels especially true based on, you know, what we've been going through the past couple years, the references and the allegories to the rise of fascism in Nazi Germany that are at play in this movie. And it really rung true with me more, I think, this time, having read more about it. I think the Roger Ebert review is the one that sticks out in my mind more than anything. But yeah, I think it is a haunting hilarious and unforgettable movie in a lot of ways. And I don't know, it just has so many of the ideas that the Coen brothers are constantly playing with throughout their whole filmography, all just sort of packed into this one messy, jumbled, short movie, and I love it.
Man, I should have done a lot more reading, because as soon as you were like, oh yeah, and it points to the rise of fascism, I was like, oh, here's this whole other avenue of a way to think about this film that I didn't really, because it's ambiguous enough to where you can get so many different readings out of it. And to Brooke's point, it just makes you think about it. Like, I haven't stopped really thinking about it since I watched it a couple days ago. And that's something really special of a film. I've seen it before. I think I watched it in high school, but I didn't get nearly enough out of it the first time I watched it, which again is part and parcel for like every Coen Brothers movie I watch. I feel like I like it a lot more on the second watch. But this time it like scared me. And I think it's because I mean, we're all like creatives or aspiring creatives here. It touched on a nerve of creative anxiety that like paralyzed me as much as I thought it was hilarious. And it made me like question every thought I've ever had about what the kind of like stories I want to tell as a filmmaker, or like it really, I mean, it hit deeply this watch.
I was thinking it would have gone well with I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Yeah. I had similar, yeah.
Totally.
And it is hilarious also. And can I really quickly, on the thread of the hilarity, can I read you my favorite collection of lines in this movie real quick?
Absolutely. Should we read them? Should we
perform them?
Should we perform?
Sign them?
I didn't have time to get like a table read ready. But, I'll do my best. Okay. Beat it, creep. Let somebody else spin the dame. Step aside, Four Eyes. Hey, Four Eyes, take a hike. Suck an egg. Hey, go sit on a tomato. That was probably my favorite part in the entire film.
Ooh.
My favorite part is every time anybody goes, Fink!
The quick dialogue of any producer in Hollywood.
Oh my God.
It's brilliant. Although I don't know how you guys can't say your favorite part is not John Goodman running down a hallway that's on fire screaming, I'll show you the life of the mind. Like, that's the best part. It has to be.
I really liked the detectives. I loved
so
their lines.
Yeah. That was spot on, like noir parody.
Yes.
Just like the musical, like the jazz that came from like that dialogue.
And when Arjun like first suggested this as a potential pairing for In a Lonely Place, I had not remembered the noir aspects of this film, because I think this is a lot less, quote unquote, of a noir in many ways until you get to about the halfway point and things start to unravel. But yeah, they're very clearly riffing on it, and it's very similar to In a Lonely Place, with a screenwriter who is not, directly involved with a murder, but is involved enough with a murder that he's going to suffer the consequences of an investigation to the murder. Let's jump into comparing the two. There's so many comparisons to make. I guess let's start with the main characters. Barton Fink versus Dick Steele. Amazing names. Just A+ names. Do these characters deserve what happened to them? Did Dix get off easy? And did Barton perhaps deserve his Sisyphean fate of forever writing screenplays that never get made?
I think it's clear Dix got off easy. I think we can push that out of the way, right? Like, he deserved worse. It would have been nice to see him get a little bit of a comeuppance. But for Barton, I think it's interesting because he's such like a pretentious might be a little bit too strong, but I think it's
No.
fair to say.
It's not.
I mean, he's so anti-selling out and anti-commercialism, but at the end of the day, he's still striving for that money, and he wants to be in the same place as that, big shirtless producer sitting by his pool. And I think, that's what he's chasing, and he's such a hypocrite in that way that I think it almost is fair that he gets that sort of ending. It's like almost tragically perfect that is what his fate is after chasing the one thing that he is at least outwardly so scorning of. And I really love that because he's a hypocrite at the end of the day.
He's like, oh,
Brooke, go ahead.
oh, okay. I was just gonna say he is like the perfect representation of almost every white male in any class in college that I've ever been in. Sorry, Caleb. But,
Like I said, I connected too much with this film.
yeah, you had your moment. No, I just, pretentious is absolutely the right word. I think his most interesting thing for me was the fact that he's like, we see his success in New York, you know what I mean? And we see that transformation. And I feel like a lot of times in the modernist pieces that we discuss, or like other like modernist kind of film stuff, for me, like at least in this time period, there is kind of that like coastal divide between like New York vibes and LA vibes. And like I know Caleb had like a very like self-reflective experience, but the only one that I had was like, maybe I should go to New York instead of LA. I don't know. I feel like I could wear a flower crown, but is it worth selling my soul for? I'll just be a little bitchier in New York. But yeah.
Well, but what's interesting about Barton is that he also rejects New York. Like
Yes.
he doesn't want their praise, and he doesn't want their, like, he wants to change New York or whatever. So he doesn't want to be a part of them. And when he gets to Hollywood, he's not really a part of them either. And it's like, he doesn't know how to be happy, and he doesn't know, I guess it's because he doesn't listen, as John Goodman like tells us very forcefully.
Right.
He's trying to tell stories that aren't his, without engaging with the people that he would be, telling these stories about. So he has this very high-minded view of himself that he thinks he can do these things, but then also refuses to get in line with anybody else's direction of him. And so in a way, you can say his only sin is having not listened, and is like, okay, but then if that's his only sin, then did he deserve to wake up next to a mutilated woman and to be like, have his career put into a box never to be opened?
I think it's more than him not, trying to empathize and actually understand the people that he's writing the stories about, but that he's in it for some sort of greater glamour than I think he wants to admit to himself. I mean, you look at how reluctantly he's willing to be, I'm a writer for the pictures. He's willing to be that guy. And, there's a certain part of him that, at least I watching it felt like, he's doing this to look good to beautiful women. Every, pretty girl that Barton Fink approaches, he hits on them like very blatantly in this sort of like sheepish, meek way. That's kind of like, oh, I don't want to be totally throwing myself at you like a Humphrey Bogart would, but I still want to, leverage my position as a Hollywood writer to try to pick you up. And I think he's like so attracted to the lifestyle of somebody that's exactly the opposite of the kind of people he wants to write about. And I think there is some sort of deep sin, even though maybe you're right, he didn't deserve to wake up to a dead body.
Is his like desire for women the kernel, the core of the film? That's one thing that's like going through my mind, is what is the meaning of Barton Fink? What is the core of Barton Fink? What is like, is there something you can point to that everything else you can build around meaning and stuff? Is the hotel purgatory? Like those theories, like.
I mean, the shoes line up in the hallway. It's definitely purgatory. And like, yeah, he's really, really horny in like a really sad way. And I think that
sad and horny, worst combination.
And it does to me seem like there's like a very Freudian, like, crux here. Like, it does seem like everything does kind of boil down to that sad, pathetic, horniness and like, it kind of starts and ends with the girl on the beach. And like also he wants to be Sean Baker, but then he's like getting signed to like write like Green Book or something. But at the same time, he doesn't really want to be Sean Baker. He just wants like people to think he is, or he wants to be, yeah, but for the wrong reasons. I think, yes, Caleb, it does strike several fears about like whether I am like, if I'm making art, who am I doing it for? Is it just inherently selfish? If I'm trying to tell a story about like, someone else or like a group or just like a figure that or an idea that I care about, is it really just like about me at its core? And do I listen to people? Maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my other degree is in psychology, and for the first 2 years of college, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist, and then I realized that I like talking about my own problems far more than I like listening to other people's. So I already have my answer there, folks. I'm not ashamed of it. But yeah, I think Barton's main thing is that he wants women to want him, but he doesn't want to ask them. So he's just like, I don't know, like, would he be an incel is my question. I feel like we're getting vibes of him like, yeah, he just feels too sorry for himself, and he like is making these unnecessary sacrifices to like seem like a martyr, but with nothing coming of it except that he like lives in a room with like cum walls and he has to make friends with a murderer. So I don't know, but like at the end of the day, I don't think I really like hated him though. Like even despite like all of these things that I've said, I still kind of like him, and I'm like, yeah, I'm along for this, like with this journey with him. I'm here for it. So I don't know why that is.
Can we talk about the cum walls and the mosquito and the picture that hangs on the wall and all of these like very clearly like, here's this symbol that we're gonna throw at you, and we're not really gonna reveal the machinations behind it. Did you guys have any read on any particular, the walls coming down or the fiery hell that happens inexplicably and John Goodman calmly walking into his door? Like the film breaks down into a level of unreality that the Coens are really good at crafting. And did you have any read on those breakdowns, and did it enhance the film for you to dip into the surreal?
I don't want to skip too much over the symbolism inside the room, but I do think the Goodman ending was, I don't know, it's hard because I think I might have even read the Ebert review before I had even seen Barton Fink, and it might just be like pushing my mind in that direction, but he writes it so well. I'll actually read just this one paragraph he has specifically regarding the Goodman character. He says, the Coens mean this aspect of the film, I think, to be read as an emblem of the rise of Nazism. They paint Fink as an ineffectual and impotent left-wing intellectual who sells out while telling himself he's doing the right thing, who thinks he understands the, quote, common man, but does not understand that, for many common men, fascism had a seductive appeal. Fink tries to write a wrestling picture and sleeps with the great writer's mistress, while the Holocaust approaches and the nice guy in the next room turns out to be a monster. And man, like him coming back and that Dr. Strangelove-esque moment where he yells Heil Hitler while he's killing the cop and bending the steel at the edge of the bed to his will, all just gives me such icky, gross, and tragically having aged well in the sorry age of 2020, white fascist vibes, and setting it in 1941 and having, that straight cut afterwards to the producer becoming I don't know my military jargon well enough to remember what position he got,
Colonel.
but Colonel. But yeah, I think it's brilliant, and the last 30 minutes of the movie sort of turning those wheels and just sort of throwing all of these allegories at you while all just pushing them in to how this sort of ideology can be growing right in front of your face while having this mask of friendliness that you won't even notice, I think is so scary and brilliant. But the symbolism inside the room, beyond me. That is very intriguing, and I have no idea.
Yeah, just real quick on the Colonel thing. Like, what do you guys like? What does that mean? Where it was so interesting that he says like this isn't the actual uniform. Like wardrobe is the one that got this for me. Like, what are you guys' like takes on that? Real quick, I don't know. I just weird.
Good one-liner. It's a good bit. And also I think it's just the faketry, that's not a word. Falsehoods of Hollywood.
I like faketry.
Of a studio head thinking that he's important enough and it's a good idea if he puts on a fake colonel uniform so everyone around him knows that he's gonna be involved in the war.
Yeah, I guess it's like like on the one hand, it's like the sort of god complex of like executives in the industry, but at the same time, like they almost are like lended that complex in reality by like in like this era, I guess, being or in any era being the voices of like propaganda. And yeah, also we didn't mention the notepad in the room. A day or a lifetime. I mean, purgatory to the max, I guess. But yeah. And there is like the sense that like the way that, you know, he moves the pencil and like there's dust, like clearly no one has moved this pencil from this notepad in like years. Of like Brooke, you mentioned The Shining. There is that kind of sense that like he has always kind of been here in this sort of cerebral prison and will always be there.
Well, how do you view the ending then? Because that almost feels like heavenly if we're to strictly view that as purgatory, which is bizarre, but at the same time maybe makes a little bit of sense because he's, you know, finally forced, I guess, to let go of his dreams of becoming some sort of glamorous superstar, but still a little bit confounding.
Maybe.
Well, I guess the question there is like, do you think at the end, and that's the difference between like Dix and Barton is, you know, both films are like clearly about morality and kind of underlying ugliness of a person's character, but like Dix seems to understand his wrongful behavior and show remorse for it, at least occasionally, even though he just keeps doing it. But like Barton throughout the movie, he never gets it. But then when he has that confrontation with with Charlie at the end, like, do you think when he gets out, like that is a liberation from like his own, like the prison of his own making, or like I genuinely can't tell. Like I understand that reading, but at the same time, there's never really a moment where it feels like he understands what he's been doing wrong this whole time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I hesitate to give any sort of reading on the end because as soon as I say one thing, I'm going to convince myself of the other. Because while you're saying that, as like, do we view it as a liberation? My initial viewing of it was like the complete opposite, where I'm thinking, okay, either this man's like mental state is completely broken down and he's actually just sitting in the hotel staring at the picture, thinking he's actually on at the beach, or it's that he goes to the beach, he thinks he's liberated, but then the world reminds him that even if he may be physically outside of that room and outside of that circumstance and situation, he's still in it metaphorically. And it's like it's brilliant because it could be like either or, and you could probably write an entire thesis on either or and have good evidence and arguments to back up either claim.
Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe he's dead now too.
Has he been dead the whole time? I don't.
I mean, also like when the hotel is going up in flames, like there's no clear way out. I'm like, that elevator is not functioning. Like, is there an exit stairwell? I don't.
There's an emergency staircase.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's maybe there was a fire escape, but it didn't look like it.
But like the fact that we don't see him leave it does feel like we're entering further into like a dreamlike state. And also the fact that in the end, yeah, the guy who has been preaching about the common man for the entire movie and like kind of the gritty real world of fishmongers and whatever sees this, magazine beauty, like picturesque woman on the beach that's literally, literally out of a photograph. And he's just like, you're very beautiful. Like, are you in the picture, or have you thought of being in the pictures or whatever? Just like kind of cementing this idea of like artificial beauty, I guess, and kind of rendering all his like waxing poetic about the common man void again, I guess.
I mean, like, he still, like, he grabs the script, right? Like, on his way out, he, like, grabs the script. And I think it's interesting that, like, they continue the kind of, like, the not listening, hearing theme, like, with the cotton ball stuffed in the ears or whatever is the only way that he can write. But then, like, on the beach, he also has a hard time, like, hearing the girl. She has a hard time hearing him. And they, like, still have a communication barrier in that sense.
Also, what's in the box, guys?
Oh yeah,
I
know you said it's his creativity, but like I was like, oh, it's absolutely the dismembered heads. That's one thing, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It can be. I mean, I think it's obviously implied that it's the dismembered head
of Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah.
Oh,
that wouldn't that be a twist?
Good movie.
Yes.
I do also, Alicia, while you were talking about like the physical reality of him being able to leave a hotel that's burning, I was thinking about not a single person in what we're led to believe full rooms that each have shoes out. Not a single one of them are running or like sprinting out. So they're not, their reality is called into question. I mean, I don't think you can really take any of this film on its surface in terms of like what's real, what's not. I don't even think that that's necessarily a productive way to look at it. But there are so many little things like that breaks your mind in a way that's surreal without being like a cartoon pig walking down a hallway. And it breaks me. It's like the noises that Barton hears. I was reading like YouTube comments on a video essay, and somebody pointed out that the noises that he hears are actually just his noises that he makes played back at different times. Like the sex is the sex that he and the girl have. The like the crying is like when he's crying to Charlie about leaving, but just played at different times. That broke my brain because I didn't catch on to that. And then I went back and listened to it, and it's just, there are so many little things like that it's like, okay, well, clearly this film isn't taking place in a, like, it's supposed to be realistic, Hollywood, but I don't know exactly what to get out of it, except for little like brain trails that I go off on thinking about, and I can point back to different things. I guess it doesn't congeal into a like, oh, this is what it means. It was all a dream. And I love that.
Yes. I don't like when things do that. So I do like this. And like the thing about him, like all the kind of phantom like residents, it's almost like he thinks there are all these characters in the hotel, but like they're all really him, in the sense that he tries to draw inspiration from life in like these pedestrian characters, but they're all, I guess it all just kind of comes back to his own ego. But at the same time, yeah, there's just like, it was really haunting. Like it reminds me kind of the Spirited Away like train or something, like just like an empty hall of like spirits, or it's very sad, but at the same time, like it does feel traceable to his like self-indulgence, I guess.
All right.
In the Coens, in my opinion, in their best work, but also in just their original work, what they get so well, I think, is that like these are the movies. They don't need to be realistic. Like that doesn't matter. It's a story. So like, what does it mean? Like, what does it matter that we don't that a hotel catches on fire and John Goodman tries to get into his room?
Got valuables in there.
It's his home. He came into his home. We have talked about Goodman. We've touched on him, right? Amazing performance. Just maybe his best. I don't know. 10 Cloverfield Lane might give it a run for his money in my book, but
It's this or Lebowski for me, I think. But this kind of pushed it in this direction, I think, especially that last 10 minutes.
I think it's good because like he's almost likable sometimes. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I think that's
he
what
is
makes it great.
likable.
Yeah, and like
He's
at the
likable.
same time, at first you're like, get out, like you, like this is annoying. But then yeah, you grow an affection for him as Barton does, and like, you kind of don't want him to go. But don't worry, he doesn't.
No, don't kill all those people. You're so sexy.
Well, what does him being a serial killer mean for if he's supposed to be our stand-in for the common man who can tell us some stories? Like, what is that supposed to mean for what the Coens or what Barton Fink is to make of like the common man? That
I mean, now I can only think about it in like the Ebert Arjun terms. Like I'm like putting a MAGA hat on him now and like seeing him as like, yeah, the representative of like I guess a class of people that Barton, the kind of liberal intellectual, is like exploiting, kind of surface level exploiting, and like mining and glorifying their like whatever, like salt of the earth kind of elements, but at the same time completely ignoring all the like real kind of tragedy and like sinister stuff growing beneath that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my read at least, and it's such an ambiguous movie that I think if I watched it again, I might feel a little bit differently. But this time, having just watched it a couple hours ago, I felt like it was a very cynical movie, more so than a lot of their films, in the sense that I don't think it had a very optimistic view of either of their main characters, who are very polar opposites, and I think it kind of thinks the worst of humanity in a way. I mean, maybe it's a little bit misanthropic, but I don't know. I think it thinks very lowly of Barton Fink in this sort of pseudo-intellectualism that causes people to think they're above the common man while still convincing themselves that they're fighting for it. And obviously, I don't think it thinks very high of the character who screams Heil Hitler at the end. So where does that leave us? I don't know. It is an ambiguous movie, and that ending might be a little bit more hopeful for Barton Fink than I thought it was this time. But I do think it's at least a little bit hopeful, or lacking hope, I guess, for the world at large.
Well, I do want to talk about and make a point about the like just Jewishness of this film.
Oh, true.
Because
I like totally forgot about that.
I mean, that's a whole nother avenue of like ways to discuss and like ways to see this film. Because I was texting my friend Josh, who's definitely not listening to this podcast. But Josh is a very smart guy, really big into movies, and he a lot of the times has troubles with the Coen brothers, not on enjoying them. He typically likes them, but he does not like how he feels as though they just love torturing their characters, and that's like a common complaint with the Coen brothers. But let me read just like some texts of his about the Jewishness, because he's also Jewish, so he can probably speak better to this than I can. He says, I think Barton Fink reveals some complex and deeply rooted Jewish inferiority complexes. I think a lot of the anxiety specifically ties into male Jewish feelings of emasculation, weakness, and impetus. I like if a non-Jew made this movie, I think it would be widely regarded as anti-Semitic and offensive, which isn't a criticism of the movie per se, but it falls in line with the general problem I have with the movie's relentless negativity and cynicism. The whole movie is a nasty, self-deprecating joke. And I think that those are all like, I mean, fair criticisms. And as a Jewish person, he felt that like it was not, I mean, not offensive because he saw Barton Fink as more of a stand-in for the Coens than like Jewish men, you know, as a whole. But I don't know, did you guys have any thoughts past what Josh said or about what Josh said regarding the either
I mean, it was definitely like on my mind the whole time we were watching, and like part of it is light, right? Part of it seems like just the classic kind of joke about Hollywood. Also, by the way, Tony Shalhoub in this. But on the other hand, yeah, like I don't know, like I don't really have the authority to say much on it, but like I've heard people talking about this as like kind of with Barton and the Coens in like working as the self-hating or self-loathing Jew. And like I do know that, yeah, most of their films involve like a kind of biblical narrative of suffering. I mean, A Serious Man is Job, right? Like just really, yeah, like bleak. And you don't, but the thing is, it never seems like black and white to me. It seems like it is them grappling with like their own personal issues and not necessarily like trying to pass judgment on their characters. It's more like this is what the personal morality of the character is, not necessarily like absolute ethics. And this is like how the character as a proxy for us is dealing with those like internal conflicts. I think it's interesting. I can only ask questions about it. Can't really answer any of them.
I think the thing about them torturing their characters, especially in their early films, and I think maybe might be a little bit exclusive to their early films, honestly, it speaks a little bit more to maybe their lack of maturity or youth, maybe. I don't know what you want to call it, but I think if you look at their newer films, it has much more optimism toward their main characters, in where their first four films, I think, really don't at all. And I mean, this is the first one that really deals with faith in that way. But when you talk about A Serious Man, sure, I mean, it is all kind of one big joke on Michael Stuhlbarg, but I think there is much more of a point behind it. It is not a dark comedy in the sense that it is more about life's cruel tragedies. And yeah, I don't know. I think it says a lot that the films that they made after this were very, I think, purposefully going in the opposite direction, where Fargo, what's her name? Marge Gunderson, I think they have a lot more respect for her and the characters in The Big Lebowski and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and the films that followed this. I think that's probably cutting back at a lot of the criticism that they received for their first couple films, saying, you guys don't like your characters very much. And I think that's a very good point. And I think it speaks exactly to that sort of misanthropy that plagues their early films. And I don't like it necessarily. It's more cynical about the world than I personally am. But I think as a sort of statement of their worldview, especially as these sort of early filmmakers breaking into Hollywood and seeing all of the terrible things that Hollywood throws at young filmmakers and going through the system like that, I think it is fascinating at the very least.
I presented that inside Llewyn Davis's Llewyn Davis. I blanked on his name for a second. I was gonna say inside Llewyn Davis's main character. I threw Llewyn Davis at Josh as like, oh, is this a better example of like the Coen brothers treating their like Jewish character? And Josh said, I think he's the perfect counterexample, because the Coen brothers clearly feel sorry for him and find his story very sad. I also think A Serious Man and Uncut Gems provide counterexamples. Both are negative, quote unquote, portrayals reflecting common Jewish tropes, but the former clearly carries a deep respect for Jewish tradition and the wisdom of Jewish thinking, and the latter holds the communal and familial aspects of Jewish life in high regard. So I do think you make a good point, Arjun, in that as their filmmaking careers go on, they find a way to have characters that go through, really hard things in their life and perhaps reflect negative aspects of themselves and their community that they represent. But it provides their later films might provide a more holistic view in that, because A Serious Man is all about being Jewish, whereas this is, Barton Fink is a Jewish character.
Yeah, and I think another thing is they, maybe more than anybody outside of Lynch, have been so adamantly against answering any questions about what their movies mean. They just refuse to go into it at all in any interviews. And I think a big part of that is they realize that they are evolving in their stances on what film and art mean and what their own faith means. And I think it's smart in a way, because any answer that they could have given in 1991 clearly would have been different than what they would have said now. And seeing that evolution through their art, I think, and interpreting it any way that we can and digging through it so they don't have to give us their flawed and ever-changing answers and letting us sort of pick it apart, I think is what makes their film so interesting and so great.
And like we were talking about Mother earlier, Darren Aronofsky is like the complete, opposite of that approach, which drives me nuts.
I still think Mother is great, but yeah, that is frustrating.
I'm forever torn on that one.
Different podcast.
So yeah, I was gonna say, so we're getting to about a little bit over an hour in recording time. So were there any last, connections you wanted to make between these two films, or any final thoughts?
Well, we never talked about Ray and Graham and their insane relationship.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. I have to read this.
We've done a lot of reading on this. I feel bad that I have not read any.
This is like the first time I did. I was like IMDb trivia.
Yeah, that's me. Every movie I watch is immediately IMDb. So here's this about A Lonely Place, according to IMDb. Producer Robert Lord was worried about having Nicolas Ray and Gloria Graham, then husband and wife whose marriage was on the rocks, working together. He made Graham sign a contract stipulating that, quote, "My husband shall be entitled to direct, control, advise, instruct, and even command my actions during the hours from 9 to 6 p.m. every day except Sunday. I acknowledge that in every conceivable situation, his will and judgment shall be considered superior to mine and shall prevail."
Ooh, that's the sign of a healthy relationship.
Was this an autobiography in A Lonely Place, or?
Exactly. And even more, Graham was also forbidden to, quote, "nag, cajole, tease, or in any other feminine fashion seek to distract or influence him." God, that's a piece of 1950 right there for you.
Oh, crazy! I would. Oh my God, that's awful.
I'm thinking about making that part of my wedding vows.
I'm glad we brought up Mother then too, because weren't Aronofsky and Lawrence also dating while that movie was being made?
Yep. Ew.
Ew, indeed.
Is that the note we're gonna end on?
I don't want us to.
Any
positive feminist note.
Yeah, did you guys have any positive like feminist readings of either of these films? Any
What women? Oh yeah, Audrey. That was her name.
Oh, I don't remember if it's
Plaza.
Audrey or Aubrey actually.
Oh, she was great when she died. That was a really good scene for her. Where
I
she's
guess
quiet. And
Audrey. Okay, and Jennifer Jason Leigh apparently auditioned for that role.
Huh. Well, another bit of trivia: Frances McDormand was at the beginning. When there's that play, it's her voice.
And John Turturro's voice too.
Oh.
Weird.
I think it does. The Coen Brothers movie at least like points to this woman who's on the outside, who's actually the creative source, the core of the alcoholic writer. Like there's an acknowledgement there that even though she's not like she exists in the movie to be killed, but she also like is I guess it reveals the layers under the surface rather than keeping them closed
That's
off.
the lady from Marie Antoinette.
Whoa.
Which
what?
one?
One?
She's the main lady who takes care of Kirsten Dunst.
Oh.
Yes.
We've
Ooh,
gone full
we
circle.
planned this.
Wow.
Judy Davis. Yeah, I was like, she looks so familiar. Like, what
Yeah,
is-
she does.
Yes.
My
Oh my
memory
God,
apparently
yes.
does not last longer than a week, but
It's all right. Better
Wow.
than a goldfish.
It's
All right.
beautiful.
On
well, do
that
we want
note,
to talk about what we've been watching real quick, or?
Oh.
Brooke, you can head out if
Okay.
if you want to quit, you can.
Wait, this is how
You
I leave.
announced your exit. You might as
No,
well
no,
make
no.
it.
It's just
Yeah,
I
at least
haven't-
this time it's all very deliberate. This episode.
yeah,
Um,
instead of last time. Here, maybe I'll try to accidentally freeze for like half the podcast. And we'll see how much I contribute. No, I just haven't been watching anything except for In a Lonely Place and Barton Fink. Those are the most recent ones. I did watch everything but the last 20 minutes of Just Mercy yesterday.
What did you think?
I liked it. I cried when one of the dudes was getting electrocuted. Very sad, made me very angry about the death penalty. Honestly, there was like a lot of pausing in between to like Google things. I did not realize that it was like the guy that was the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative stuff. So there was a lot of Googling, and I have yet to finish the last 20 minutes, which I think are like important minutes in that film. So I'll get back to you on a full review once I finish, but
Gotta leave some suspense for the viewers to come back and
Yeah,
hear.
yeah,
yeah. Right.
Listeners, so I
no
will.
one will know.
Well done, Brooke.
It's been a long night.
Arjun, what have you been watching?
I guess it's been 2 weeks since
Been a
we
long
last
time.
met. So I knocked out some horror-ish movies leading up to Halloween. I watched Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton movie. Didn't love it and thought it was all right. And on Halloween night, I watched Doctor Strangelove, which is probably my favorite movie ever, but scary in its own way. And then to kick off Noirvember, even though Noirvember, even before I knew that we were doing this on the podcast, I watched The Maltese Falcon and thought it was fucking awesome. Good movie.
Nice. Alicia?
Okay, on Saturday, after like I stumbled home after dancing in the street all day, White Claw in hand, and my friend and I made like undercooked spaghetti and watched Scooby-Doo in like a fugue state, the 2004 live action film.
Is that the Mystery Island one?
Yes,
Or
And the
Spooky
Cardinelli
Island.
Hive, rise
Yeah.
up.
It is, I mean, yeah, it turns out I remember like everything about that movie.
Yeah.
And it's like pure body horror in my opinion. Let's see.
You know,
I
it was
watched...
supposed to be rated R, and it was supposed to be like a lot of drugs.
Oh my God. I mean, it makes sense.
Drugs
I was
implied.
listening to the We Hate Movies on it recently too, which made it all the more better. God, okay, I'll start with the more pedestrian choices and then build my way up. I also watched After We Collided, the After sequel, which is based on a fan fiction that my friends and I, a Harry Styles fan fiction that my friends and I were deep into in like the 9th grade.
Oh, you were gonna say wrote. I was like, what?
But it was like, I can't explain the way I felt watching this movie. It was insane. Like the first one is like a fan fiction in movie form, but like in a way that makes sense. It's bad, but like it's a movie kind of. This was not a movie. This was like I'm not gonna try. If you want to watch it, please be warned. Nothing makes sense. I also watched Jeepers Creepers. I just, put the person who directed it out of my mind.
Who directed
and
Jeepers Creepers?
Victor Salva, who has a lot of pedophilia type stuff. Pedophilia. In his log. But I liked it. I love Justin Long. He's very cute. The movie was good in such a like indie horror sort of way. I really dug the way that it was like paced, and the ending, like it seems so obvious when the ending comes around what it is, but like you just didn't expect it. And it's just like a very tight little movie. I watched The Lodge, which I liked. I know a lot of people are kind of split on it, but I thought it was good as kind of like a study of trauma, I guess. And also if you ever feel like hating children. And then I finished Bly Manor, Caleb, and I liked it, but I felt kind of similarly about Hill House, where like sometimes people will just repeat the same thing over and over again, and you're like, I get it, this is a theme. And things are just a little bit overstated. But yeah, and then Kramer versus Kramer, because I'm trying to work my way through some like early Meryl, and it's great. And I think that is it. Oh yeah, and when on election night I was feeling very nervous, and so as I went to bed I watched An Education for like the 80th time, because it's one of my favorite movies. Would recommend as a comfort movie. And I'm reading the memoir that it's based on now. Yeah.
Justin Long was like a teaspoon of handsomeness away from having the Joseph Gordon-Levitt career. I feel so bad for him.
You're so right. Oh my god.
Like so close to being America's sweetheart. He was just like a little cutie pie instead.
Wow.
That's right. And at the same time, he can play like a prick,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, is it worse to be like so close to handsomeness, or like
Well, there's
far
also
off?
like, I read this piece once about James Marsden and how he's like too handsome, where he's like a really good actor, but he can't be taken quite seriously enough to like consistently get roles that he deserves. It's interesting.
I'm sorry to drag this on, but can I read Justin Long's first sentence of his IMDb page, like just real quick?
Sure.
Yes, please.
A likable, a likable, boyish-looking actor with thick eyebrows and a friendly smile. Justin Long is a native of Connecticut. King.
Poetry.
Native of Connecticut.
Should I read what I've been watching real quick?
Please.
Yes.
Should I do it in the same way that I did it last week, which is just like the firestorm of? You remember when I read it like all like really fast because there was too much to focus on.
Oh,
Do you want me to put you on the
Sure.
clock?
Should I?
I want to see how fast you can actually do it.
Last time it was ridiculous because I was just so tired. All right, ready? All right, 3, 2, 1, go. I've been watching Blind Manor with a bunch of friends. It's been really fun. I'm 6 episodes in, but I agree with your critiques that it's a little too obvious in its themes. I watched Brazil, which had really great vision, but wasn't really told interestingly enough, and I was really sad because I thought it was going to be a favorite of all time. I watched The Witches, which was some great puppetry, the 90s version. I convinced my girlfriend not to watch the 2020 version, and we watched the 90s version instead, which was fun. I watched Mother, the Albert Brooks film, not the Darren Aronofsky or the Bong Joon-ho film. And it's a fun little lighthearted comedy about like the relationship between a mother and a son. I watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is the best way to spend a Saturday morning, period. I watched Bad Hair, which is a really good and really interesting sort of schlocky B horror, but also racial commentary and 80s commentary, and it's a lot of fun. It's on Hulu. Go check it out. I watched North by Northwest, which is Hitchcock, and I've been meaning to watch more Hitchcock, and that's some good Cary Grant spy time. His House, I watched His House, good Netflix movie, horror movie, also another sort of allegorical thing about immigrants and migration and the migrant crisis in Europe, and very interesting. Some really good spooks, actually. I really enjoyed it. I watched The World of Apu, which is the third film of in the Satyajit Ray trilogy, the Apu trilogy, and it's just a masterpiece. The first film, Padre Panchali, is also a masterpiece. Both of them were instant favorites, like 5 out of 5. The middle film, Aparajito, I might be really botching that pronouncement, was kind of lesser, but I really recommend the trilogy as a whole. I watched Side by Side, which is a documentary about film and digital, and like what's going to happen to the future of movies, and like how did we used to make films and how do we now make movies with like digital things, and how did it change and what are the implications. And it stars like every filmmaker you want to hear from, and it's hosted by Keanu Reeves. It's a lot of fun. Side by Side. In a Lonely Place, we talked about it. Moonstruck, I watched Moonstruck. Cher, great. Nicolas Cage, great. Italian American.
We need to have Eric on to show his costume.
His costume?
Did you see he was Nicolas Cage in Moonstruck, and it's his new Twitter picture.
Oh, I for some reason thought that he was supposed to be who's that guy from Nice Guys? I thought he was supposed to be.
Oh, he did both, I think. I think he posted about like doing both. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Snap out of it.
Eric loves Moonstruck, so maybe we'll have him on about it. And then just today, before watching the podcast, I also watched Mission Impossible Fallout, which is just the platonic ideal of a blockbuster action movie. I want to see Henry Cavill load his arms all the time, and I want to have Vanessa Kirby stare at me wordlessly.
Yeah, I would like that.
That's what I've been watching. That wraps it up. That's the end of our show today.
Thinking of murdering things?
I'm thinking of writing things. I'm thinking of abusing things. I'm thinking of ruining things.
I'm thinking of burning things. A hotel, I guess.
That's just a hotel.
Just one thing.
A relationship.
Some cigarettes.
After reading.